David's census and God's judgment. In 1 Chronicles chapter 21, Satan incites King David to conduct a census of Israel. Joab, the military commander, warns David that it's not a wise decision, but David insists on going ahead. Later, David realizes that his action was wrong and repents before God. Because of his sincere repentance, God gives him a choice between three consequences: 3 years of famine, 3 months of being attacked by enemies, or 3 days of God's judgment. David chooses the third option, hoping that God would show mercy. As a result, God sends a plague upon Israel, and 70,000 men die. But the devastation doesn't stop there. Verse 15 describes how God sends an angel to destroy Jerusalem. However, as the angel is about to complete his task, the Lord sees it and relents, telling the angel to stop. The angel is seen standing on the threshing floor of Araunah, the Jebusite, holding a drawn sword over Jerusalem. The sight is so overwhelming that David and his elders are terrified. The passage reveals that this angel is enormous, standing between heaven and earth with his sword raised above the city. In a dramatic turn, the angel speaks to one of David's prophets, instructing him to build an altar on the very threshing floor where the angel is standing. Araunah, who was threshing wheat at the time, is terrified when he sees the angel. He offers to give the land to David for free, but David insists on paying full price, even refusing Araunah's offer of free animals for the sacrifice. David wants to make the offering at his own expense. After the sacrifice, God sends fire from heaven to consume it, and the angel sheaths his sword, signaling the end of the judgment. The chapter concludes by noting that David could no longer go to the high place at Gibeon to inquire of God, because he feared the angel's sword. Foreshadowing the Exodus. Here's something I never noticed while reading Genesis. After the famine in Egypt, Joseph reveals his identity to his family, and they are saved by the brother they had sold into slavery years earlier. Joseph then introduces 5 of his brothers to Pharaoh, who, upon learning they are shepherds, suggests they be put in charge of his own sheep. Joseph also brings Pharaoh to meet his father, Jacob. What stood out to me this time is that the text mentions twice that Jacob, Joseph's father, blessed Pharaoh. There's a footnote indicating that blessed could also mean greeted or said farewell. But if we take it to mean that Jacob truly blessed Pharaoh, it raises some intriguing questions. Hebrews 7 verse 7 states, "Without a doubt, the lesser is blessed by the greater." This could imply that Jacob, later known as Israel, is being portrayed as greater than Pharaoh. If true, this might be foreshadowing the future events of the Exodus, where God judges Egypt and delivers Israel, suggesting that Jacob's blessing of Pharaoh carries symbolic weight, pointing toward Israel's eventual triumph over Egypt. Elijah's supernatural speed. As kids, many of us dream about having superpowers, but we rarely think of them in the context of the Bible. However, there is a fascinating moment in the Old Testament where God grants someone supernatural speed. It's a small but intriguing verse, tucked in just after a pivotal event in the life of the prophet Elijah. Elijah had just completed his dramatic confrontation with the prophets of Baal, where he called down fire from heaven to consume a soaked altar, proving the power of the one true God. In front of a crowd of idol worshippers, Elijah humiliated the false prophets by exposing their impotence. After slaying the prophets, Elijah declared the end of a 3-year famine, announcing that rain was coming. He urged King Ahab to hitch up his chariot and get moving before the storm hit. As the sky grew dark and rain began to fall, the text shares something remarkable. The power of the Lord came upon Elijah, and he tucked his cloak into his belt and ran ahead of Ahab all the way to Jezreel. Scholars estimate that the distance between Elijah's starting point and Jezreel was over 16 miles, or 25 kilometers. Ahab, who was riding in a chariot, a swift war vehicle, would have had a significant head start. Yet, Elijah ran so fast that he outran the chariot, covering the distance in an extraordinary display of speed. This wasn't just about outrunning a vehicle. It was a supernatural act, a divine empowerment that allowed Elijah to race at an almost impossible pace. While this may seem like an odd detail, it speaks volumes about Elijah's dedication to God. He wasn't simply trying to reach Jezreel quickly for the sake of speed. He was hoping that the dramatic events of the day would spark a spiritual revival among God's people. By outrunning Ahab's chariot, Elijah was symbolically racing toward the heart of Israel's corrupt leadership, ready to confront evil with the power of God and inspire change. In this brief but powerful moment, Elijah's supernatural speed is not just a display of physical ability, but a sign of his unwavering commitment to God's work and his desire for revival in the land. It's a reminder that when we align ourselves with God's will, He can empower us to do things beyond our natural capabilities. The man of God and the deceptive old prophet. The story in 1 Kings chapter 13 is one of the Bible's most puzzling narratives, leaving readers questioning its meaning and lesson. The chapter follows an unnamed young prophet who delivers a prophecy against King Jeroboam. In response, the king tries to seize him, but when he stretches out his hand, it miraculously withers. After the prophet prays for the king and his hand is restored, King Jeroboam offers him food and shelter, but the young prophet refuses, citing God's command not to eat or drink in that place. Things take a strange turn when an old prophet hears about the young prophet's actions and decides to track him down. He invites the young prophet to his home for a meal, but the young prophet initially refuses, stating he must follow God's command. The old prophet then claims that God told him to bring the young prophet back, which the young prophet believes. However, the old prophet was lying, and as they eat together, the word of the Lord comes to the old prophet, delivering a grim message. The young prophet has disobeyed God's command and will not be buried with his ancestors. Afterward, the young prophet is killed by a lion on his way home, and his body is left on the road. The old prophet finds him, mourns his death, and buries him in his own tomb. In an ironic twist, the old prophet ends up fulfilling the very prophecy that the young prophet had originally delivered to King Jeroboam. This story raises questions about why God allowed the young prophet to be deceived, and why the old prophet, who lied, was used to fulfill God's will. It serves as a reminder that God's purposes can be accomplished in unexpected ways, even through those who appear to act against his will. The Tragic Vow. The story of Jephthah's daughter, found in Judges 11, is a tragic and thought-provoking narrative that explores themes of sacrifice and the consequences of hasty vows. Jephthah, a judge of Israel and a skilled warrior, was called upon to lead his people against the Ammonites. In a moment of desperation, he made a rash vow to God, promising that if he achieved victory, he would offer as a burnt sacrifice whatever came out of his house to greet him upon his return. This vow set the stage for a heart-wrenching outcome, as Jephthah's only child, his daughter, greeted him with joy upon his victorious return. When Jephthah realized the implications of his vow, he was devastated. He tore his clothes in anguish, lamenting that he had spoken to God and could not take back his promise. His daughter, demonstrating remarkable strength and acceptance, asked for 2 months to mourn her virginity before facing her fate. She understood the gravity of the situation and chose to support her father's commitment to God, showcasing her own faith and resilience. This poignant moment highlights the emotional complexity of the story, as both father and daughter grapple with the consequences of a vow made in haste. The conclusion of the story remains ambiguous. It is unclear whether Jephthah ultimately sacrificed his daughter or dedicated her to lifelong service to God. This ambiguity has sparked various interpretations and discussions regarding the nature of vows in ancient Israelite culture. The tale serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of thoughtful commitments and the potential impact of our words on others. Jephthah's daughter has become a symbol of unwavering faith amidst tragedy, inviting readers to reflect on their own promises and the weight they carry. Teleportation in the New Testament. The final story might surprise you, but there are actually multiple instances of what could be considered teleportation in the New Testament. Many of you are probably familiar with the fact that after his resurrection, Jesus seemed to teleport at will. He appeared to his disciples twice by simply passing through locked doors, and he even appeared suddenly in front of 2 disciples on the road to Emmaus during a meal. There's also an intriguing account in the book of Acts, where Philip, after baptizing the Ethiopian eunuch, is suddenly taken away by the Spirit of the Lord and transported to Azotus, about 38 kilometers away. This is widely considered another example of teleportation. But there's a third story that often gets overlooked. One night, the disciples were caught in a violent storm on the sea when they saw a figure walking toward them on the water. They soon realized it was Jesus, and even Simon Peter briefly walked on the water too. However, this miraculous event often overshadows the next astonishing moment. Once Jesus steps into the boat, John 6 verse 21 says, "Then they were willing to take him into the boat, and immediately the boat reached the shore where they were heading." The text doesn't specifically describe this as teleportation, but whether it was a sudden acceleration of speed or something else, this is certainly an extraordinary miracle that often goes unnoticed. Moments like this reveal glimpses of Jesus' ultimate authority over time, space, and matter, underscoring just how powerful the God we serve truly is. In our next video, we'll dive into forgotten Bible stories with deeper meanings, where we take a closer look at some of the most intriguing, lesser-known stories in the Bible that are packed with profound lessons and hidden truths. If you've been fascinated by some of the unbelievable stories we've covered, get ready for more. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you will be updated when a new video drops.